Today's episode 71 of the Deep Dives. Today we're going to be talking more about what you've been listening to, Destry, in your weekly music preference. And since this is the week before Easter, we're going to talk about the transition from Passover to Easter. Episode 71.
Josh, what I've been listening to, I know it's going to be a shocker if anybody's ever listened to this, Metallica.
You've been on this one for a while.
I've been on a Metallica tear for the last month. And
Which is funny because Metallica's not your favorite artist of all time.
No, if you do listen, you'll know that I'll listen to Van Morrison for a month, which is one of my favorites, one of my wife and I's favorites together. I'll listen to Metallica. I'll listen to whomever. I just get deep into it.
Right.
You know, and I've listened. I think I've put in Elton John every now and then just to come back to sanity.
Yeah.
And then I'll put in.
I've never heard that.
Well,
Be a description of Elton John.
After, I don't bang my head literally, but in my head I'm banging my head kind of because Metallica
Last week I would think you do bang your head literally because you're like drumming on the
that's true.
stereo and, you know.
I literally, honestly, I can't move my head back and forth that much.
Oh, okay.
But I can move my body. Anyway.
Okay.
Metallica, the rhythm guitar, ding, 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 is almost like a...
Now it sounds like you listen to bluegrass.
It's almost like a lead singer.
Yeah.
It's very prevalent. So it's a very heavy downbeat. And the drummer's bass drum is huge. It's huge, and he has two of them. And very often he goes with his feet. Man, it's so good. So I'm listening to all this stuff. Sometimes I just listen mostly to the drums. Sometimes I'm listening mostly to the guitar, words, lyrics. So last night I went on a trip out of town, and I listened to 2 CDs. The whole trip. I was in the car for 2 hours. I listened to 2 CDs. I listened twice, 2 or 3 times there, 2 or 3 times back. And I just listened to different things. Anyway, different parts of the music. So the trip I went on last night was a photography trip. I went to, it's not Sandus, South Walton, Walton High School. And if Pensacola's here, South Walton is east about 2 hours. And you can go I-10 or you can go 98. On the way there, I went 98.
I'm sorry.
Well, I know it. Well, my mother was in the hospital getting an ablation just over the bridge, a little bit into 98. So I looked at the map, and at the time, Google Maps said it's 1 minute difference.
Right.
Going backtracking and going 10 the quicker way, or just doing 98. I had my top down. It's a beautiful day, so I took 98. And if you don't know anything about 98, which you probably don't, it parallels the water.
Right. For all of our listeners out of state and across the world, 98
98
is
highway,
not the funnest.
Highway 98, 2,000 stoplights.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
There's a lot of stoplights.
And on a good day, you'll catch one of them green.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I trusted, and they were right. They were right. I wasn't in a really big hurry. I knew I was going to be a couple minutes late, so I was going to miss the Star Spangled Banner. I was going to miss the beginning.
Yeah.
So I just took the scenic route. Certainly the scenic route. Man, oh man, it's just beach way. Anywhere you are, you look to the right, you can see the inlet, you can see the water, and then sand, and then beach.
Right.
So wherever there's not a house or a store or restaurants or hotels or whatever, you look over the right, you can see the water. So it was a lot quicker. It felt a lot quicker than I thought it did until we got to Destin and Sandestin. And my gosh, if y'all haven't been over there in a while, it's grown up. Think Myrtle Beach. If you haven't been, if people in Myrtle Beach, it's Las Vegas on the water, perhaps. I don't know. It's just hundreds and thousands of people, restaurants, just everything. A lot of distractions.
Yeah.
Right? And it's two lane both ways.
Right.
And in the middle of 98, there's places where you could stop and do a U-turn. Boy, that's good stuff right there. Because you're doing, and people are trying to do U-turn and come out into where Bloody 98 is what it used to be called.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten a little bit better, but you got to pay attention to what you're doing there.
Right.
But anyway, so I did 98.
So it's funny, a lot of times when I have to go to Navarre for an engineering project or whatever, instead of taking 98 back to Pensacola, I'll take that road that goes through, was it the National Forest Reserve or
Is
whatever?
it 87 north?
Yeah. The one it's parallel to 98, but it's closer to the water.
Oh,
and
yes.
the speed, and it takes you through Pensacola Beach.
It's a beautiful, yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
The speed limit's only like 15 or 20 miles an hour, but there's absolutely no stoplights.
Right.
And
That's right.
my car will cruise control at 20.
Okay, so you
And
can go through there.
Yeah, and so I'll go through that whole thing 20 miles an hour, and I'll usually get back faster than if I go 98.
Is that right?
Because of all the stoplights.
A lot less
Yeah,
stress.
a lot less stress.
This place,
Beautiful scenery.
man. You're half a mile closer to the water than I was, right?
Yeah.
And you are literally, if it's high tide and it's been a storm, water will wash up over that road. Sand will wash up over it. And the reason it's 15 or 20 miles an hour is because there's sand turtles that are endangered, and this is an endangered place. You're going through birds and sand. It's beautiful. It is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I enjoy that ride.
I used to do that. I do the bike ride from Pensacola Beach to Navarre and back on Wednesday to Thursday mornings. And it was very, very peaceful.
Yep.
Anyway, so
Yeah, I was just at Santa Rosa Beach 2 weeks ago.
you were.
Yeah.
So you were down that.
Looking at a house that had been burned down and needed a structural evaluation.
Nice
I was
area.
actually writing the report on that this morning before the podcast.
Okay. Sandestin, right? We can go from Destin to Sandestin. And as soon as I got into Sandestin, I started seeing all the sports Teslas. It's a very high dollar area. So it almost, you go through, and even if you don't know where you are, the income just rose quite a bit as soon as I got into Sandestin because I just saw all these beautiful houses and nice cars. Anyway, so went through there. On the other side of that is the high school. So I'll pull up, hardly any place to park. It's a district championship. South Walton and West Florida High School playing for a district championship. First one I've been to. And so I walk up. Again, this is a new place. I can just tell everything's new, manicured, everything. And I get up close to the baseball field. Just I could hear the national anthem as I was walking up to the field. So I get up there, Josh. I've got 3% on my phone, and you have to buy the ticket through the phone,
right?
Through GoFan. So I get up, there, and I talked to the lady. I said, I just want you to let you know, I've got 3%. I want you to watch me do this. I've got 3%. I'm doing this. And she got on board. She said, "Come on, you can do it. You can do it, phone. Stay on." So I think she was going to let me in anyway. If she saw that I bought the ticket. And you have to do a couple more punches to spin the ticket or to use the ticket. Anyway,
yeah.
I got in with 2%. All right, I drove all this way, got here. Anyway, so I get it, and I realized that this is a artificial turf baseball field.
Right.
Everything looks different. Everything's clean. There's no dirt, And I look around. Oh, man, this whole place can't be more than 5 or 6 years old. It looks really nice. So anyway, that's a different atmosphere, and everything is new. Bathrooms, 5 or 6 bathrooms. Anyway, it's nice. And I look at South Walton. I go, are these guys college players, or what are we doing here? Because it looked like they were. A couple of guys, they look like they could walk right onto the pro field.
They were held back a few
My
grades.
gosh. So they're playing 25-year-olds? What in the world, man? This one guy got up there, and he was the biggest
High schooler
person.
has a full beard.
Yeah. This guy's got his kids with him. His whole family's rooting him on. There's one guy, the first time I saw him, I was behind him, and he was at bat. and I took a picture of just that because he looks so much bigger than the catcher and the umpire. You know what I mean? Of course, they're down lower, but still, he was extraordinarily bigger than everybody else.
He came from a Philistine high school.
Gosh, man, just huge guy. The bat looks like it's this big. He's swinging it, and everybody else, they weren't much smaller than him. And the guys that were smaller were stout and fast. You see a guy running to first base, and I love seeing guys that are really fast because they run to first base, and you see them, they go way out, way back in. They go, they're running twice as far as they have to, but they're running faster because they just round the bases, and everybody on that team ran that way. But first couple innings were good. A couple of players, senior players on West Florida, they did a great job. You know what I mean? They made the plays. The catcher made some good plays, got some people out, but he was working hard because players were coming around and coming to home quite often. You know what that means? They're making hits, they're getting on bases, and they're coming around. So, but after what's the name of the team? Not Fort Walton.
West Florida?
West Florida. No, not West Florida. South Walton. After South Walton kind of got on a run, there was no turning back.
Yeah.
West Florida made a couple errors, really errors like and dropping it,
like
high
a fly,
ball, coming in the center field, and you're close to the fence, and they misjudge, and it falls right next to it. Just things that don't normally happen were happening. The wheels fell off. They ended up winning. South Walton won 10-2, I think it was. So I was district, and I think Joe didn't anticipated that. It would have been.
That's the coach.
Yeah, the coach, Joe Ryland. I think he anticipated having problems with this team from the very beginning. I believe he anticipated having problems with this team, and he was right. They were. I think this is the team that. I think this is the team where players can choose to go to that school if they want to. Mm-hmm. So they got a good baseball team, a lot of money coming in there. Boosters are strong, brand new baseball, field. I'm a good player. I'd like to go to there. I like to go. You know what I mean?
Semi-pro player.
Pretty much, I think, is what's happening.
Needs to finish a couple credits to get his high school diploma.
If it's me, I'm baseball. If there's a mountain bike a school that was anywhere near where I grew up, you better believe I'm going to that high school, man. Hey, we'll give you a brand new mountain bike. 4 years, you get new bikes every year. You know what I mean? We got this course here that you can train on. I'm getting excited just thinking about that.
Right.
Of course I'm going to go there, right?
Yeah.
And your parents are thinking, we'll do whatever we have to get you there.
Or if there's a school that does engineering.
You'd go to that? You're right. That's exactly right.
The nerd school.
and you're competing against schools that really don't have that option.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's if you live here, you go to this school.
Yeah.
If you live here, you go to this school. It's chosen for you.
Right.
Now, I know there's appropriate terms and words for all that stuff. I don't know what it is. I just know that these guys could probably play UWF baseball and make a run for it. Right. You know what I mean? Anyway, so, but photography-wise, I learned a couple of things. They, with the new lights, they had, old lights are more yellow. Mm-hmm. They're warmer and not as strong. So think incandescent as opposed to fluorescent, or incandescent as opposed to, what's another kind?
LED?
Halogen or LED. These lights, you put them on and they blink and they come on. Mm-hmm. And looking through the camera, I'm looking with my eye, I'm looking through the camera, and man, this looks really good. It just looks clear, and it's a totally different white balance inside the camera. So I got that adjustment, and I haven't even had a chance to look at them yet, but I think they came out pretty good. So that was new also. It just looked like they were on a spotlight. It looked like everybody had a spotlight on them, you know what I mean?
Right.
It was nicely balanced. And most of the time, whenever I go to a game, if somebody sees, my camera's pretty imposing, right, Chris? It's a big camera. You know what I mean? You don't just pick up a camera like that. I'll go shoot some shots. No, you got to be very intentional to have a camera like I have. And I got the battery grip on, a long lens, whatever. So people see it, and most of the time they go, let me know if I'm in your way. You know, not last night, buddy.
Yeah.
Not last night. These are parents that, especially if they're seniors, parents that have seen their kids play t-ball, spent the money for them to go to the school. They're not getting out of my way. Mm-hmm. And I realized that the first time I put it up, I had a guy look back, and he went, he didn't get in my way, but he certainly didn't move any. And he was right up against the fence. And
I'm paid to be here.
That's right. He was not going to move. He was not, and I'm fine with that. I just need to know, what I'm up against, right?
Right.
So I look around and go, man, there's not really I saw a ledge in the very back some kids were playing on. I went, hey, I jumped on the ledge, stood up, and I'm over everybody looking on. Now I can't go left or right. I can go up or back, closer or farther away, but I can't go left or right. But I thought this would be a good vantage point for right now. So I got up there, started shooting. The ledge was about a foot wide, and if you know me, I've got veneers. I've got veneers, and if I get dizzy, my equilibrium goes to crap. It just goes. It goes away.
Balanced up on a ledge isn't the place to have that happen.
So what do you do? I can't get up there. I got veneers dizzy. Whatever. I got up there.
Play through the pain.
I did what I was supposed to do, but I didn't play around. You know what I mean? I didn't get up there and go. And move around. I kind of was knelt down and took some pictures. So that worked out well. And then when the game was over, I had a decision to make, So this is one of the last games that these kids are going to play. And I got to kind of know some of the kids. I'm getting to know them better now. I'm talking to them. They certainly recognize me. All of them recognize me now. If you put me in a lineup and say, which one is your photographer, they would pick me out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I guess he's our photographer. I don't know if he is officially or not, but he's always there, with a big camera pointing it at me. And I've seen some of his photos online, but I don't know them well enough, in my opinion, to take pictures of their grief.
Right.
Although they would be good pictures. Mm-hmm. Before we came on air, I was talking about a picture, a shot that I saw, I wish I could have taken, of what I think is an older player consoling a younger player with his arm around him, and he was looking at him. They both had their head down, but it just looked to me like one was consoling another.
Which emotion would you say makes the best photo?
I hate to say it, it's kind of grief. Mm-hmm. Grief, anything extreme.
Okay. Could
be extreme happiness. Mm-hmm. The best photo is the one, I've talked about this before, the best photo, like whenever I'm taking Sunday photos, I'm looking for something totally different.
Yeah.
I'm looking for engagement. Engagement is a good way to say, if you have engagement in any photo,
right,
that's a good photo. Any type of engagement.
Okay.
And that's what Craig wants. That's my job on Sunday and Wednesday, is to get engagement. Other photographers might say that's like a snapshot.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's okay. Whoever's paying me what they want, that's what I want to get for them. Out in the wild, like with a baseball team, action, and that's engagement.
Yeah.
But just we talked a little bit about the morning of Kennedy's death, his wife.
Right.
There's several photos that are so strong that his son, Junior, saluting the casket. Man, that's a strong picture.
Right.
And her walking up in front, escorting the casket to the resting place with 4 or 5 people flanking her to the left and to the right. The only photographer who had the right, who was paid to be there, and had permission to be there. There was only one, and he ran in front of her and took a picture and kept on going. He hardly stopped, and this is film days, so they
Right.
didn't have a lot of fast equipment where it could stop action a lot, especially when you're moving and they're moving.
Yeah.
It's a total blurry picture, but it is an iconic picture that's in everybody's head. Anytime there's any type of report on JFK and his funeral, that picture is there.
Yeah.
Because it shows her with the veil, and I think she's holding the hands of her children. And you look at that, and
You can see the grief in the picture.
Yep.
Yeah.
An emotion, a strong emotion. Background it's just a lovely picture.
Yeah.
Of what it is, right? Of what it is, it's a lovely picture. But him having the right to be there gave him the courage to do that. If he was just a photographer, if it was me, I wouldn't have done that unless. I'll give you an example, real world example. I was a photographer for my uncle's funeral. I had permission from his daughters. That's all I needed. I've got fantastic pictures, but I wouldn't do that at anybody's funeral that I didn't have the right to be there from the loved one. Now, my cousin said, yes, we want you to be there. So, hey, I'm there. I've got a right to be there almost more than anybody else because I'm working for her.
Right.
Right? I'm doing this to honor him, the soldier. I call it a soldier's funeral. And I've got pictures of the Marine or the Army guy handing her the flag. And in the background is a slightly off, slightly blurry picture of his other daughter weeping. And Gail is come on, it gives me chills right now thinking about it. I never could have gotten that, and I never would have gotten that without her permission. And I know that means a lot to her. But that was grief, but it was grief that I was asked to capture.
Right.
Capturing grief like of a homeless person or something like that, I'm not really comfortable doing that. Although they make some really good. Chris got a picture of a homeless guy that was out. Why am I laughing? Got a picture of a homeless guy that was totally passed out in front of the church.
Yeah.
He was leaned up against a telephone pole. And Chris took a picture and said, "Hey, Destry, do you know this guy?" "Yeah, that's Bill. Tell him to come in." He was out, man.
Yeah.
And belligerent, by the way, whenever he wasn't out. Anyway.
That's kind of a neat thing to think about, though, about like what emotions make for a really good picture. Because when I think back to like what are my favorite pictures of
question.
Like different people in my family. It's usually it's maybe not always grief that makes the best pictures, but I think it's like if there's an emotion that's obvious in the picture, especially if it's tied to an event that you understand. I think that's what makes a picture most meaningful. One of the things that like in all the genealogical research of my own family that I do, there's several pictures that stand out because, like, especially when you go back several generations, pictures were very rare. It was an event you get dressed up for, you schedule with, and all this stuff. And everybody's standing there in their staunch, and they're like, "This is when we take our picture."
It was expensive back then, so you had to make it happen.
But as time went on, you start to see like the advent of like personal cameras and things, and people were starting to take more snapshots. And I remember there is one of the pictures that always stands out in my mind. On my dad's side, my grandfather, he passed away before I was born, so I've never met him. But I've seen him in pictures, and one of the pictures that stands out is when he was younger than I am now, and he was with two of his daughters, and the daughters were like toddlers, and like I think one of them sitting on his knee, another one standing next to him, whatever, and it was just like this really cool picture of a dad with his two girls, and it was a happy picture, but being a father of a girl myself, I could understand like the emotion in his mind having his two girls on his knees.
That's right.
Like that. And so pictures like that, it's an emotion that's obvious in the picture, but it's one that is tied to something I understand, whether it's an
Right.
event that you lived through or you understand, or an emotion that you've shared, like with grief or something like that.
Yes.
I don't know. Those types of pictures usually are the ones that stand out for me.
So these are great questions, and it's the things that I try to bring up in Camera Club whenever we meet once a month. These are
Yeah.
the things that we talk about. Like, well, most of the time, we don't even get our cameras out
Right.
in a Camera Club. And that may be short-sighted in a way, but I'm more of the Chris and I decided a long time ago, it's really difficult to teach somebody to use a camera whenever you're at totally different levels, so we're just trying to inspire people.
Yeah.
And so why do we take photos? You're answering that question,
Right.
without even asking the question.
Yeah.
Why do you take photos? Well, it depends. For me, it's something very magical about it. There's something very spiritual and something. It's part. For me, it's part of worship, but that's not all that it is. It's being a historian also. Josh?
Our camera just overheated and stopped, so
Yeah.
there's a slight break in the flow of our normal conversation. But we were talking about the pictures.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
makes a good picture?
Yeah.
And the bottom line is emotion, depiction of a moment in time that will bring the viewer to that moment in time, or evoke some type of emotion, evoke some type of response. That's a good picture, in my opinion. So the answer is different depending on what you're going for. And perhaps that's one of the reasons that I like photography so much, is because you're creating something that can evoke an emotion from somebody.
Two favorite pictures of my wife that I have. One was both. She does not appreciate the fact that I took those pictures, but they're my favorite pictures.
Okay. Okay.
One was when we were dating in college, and we were walking to. We were in the sports center on campus, and we were walking to one of the basketball games, and I had a little point and shoot film camera with me, and I just took a quick picture of her.
Yeah.
She wasn't expecting it, whatever, but it's like one of the cutest pictures ever. The other one was, fast forward to when we're married, and it's like, I think it was the day before our daughter was born.
Oh,
so
boy.
full on pregnant, all this stuff. And she absolutely hates this picture, but it was just one of those quick snapshots. I don't think I was even taking a picture of her necessarily, but just like the scene in our house of everybody
Okay.
like opening presents or whatever. And she's in the picture, and she's trying to, she was going from like a kneeling position to standing up, and, full pregnant. It kind of got that struggle of her, like
Yeah.
trying to stand up.
I'm carrying a human here.
Yeah, but to me, it was the cutest face, the cutest, my pregnant wife,
Right.
was our daughter, who's going to be out in 24 hours, and I don't know. I really like that picture. She absolutely hates it, but it's one of my favorite pictures ever.
I think that's pretty common. There's several I could tell you about with Donna too that I
Yeah.
love. Sometimes she's in between saying something or in between emotions, but it captures something, like you said, it captures something
Yeah,
in your head that reminds
it probably
you of
only
her.
speaks to me.
Right.
But,
And
yeah.
that's a good picture.
Yeah.
And that's a good picture to you.
Yep.
It is. So anyway, Josh, our guys, West Florida, they ended up losing the district last night, but they still play for, I think, regional and state. And depending on where that's going to be, I will travel to those games as well.
Right.
And I just want to give a big, huge pat on the back to Joe Rowland, the coach, and all the other coaches and all the players. I've become a fan. I have, and it's wonderful. Chris knows that once you do a job, that's the beginning. Now the
Right.
editing starts, and you go back and you relive it and relive it and relive it, and you end up kind of becoming a fan from that, from seeing the pictures and seeing the emotion and seeing the things that happen, and and you go back again, you take pictures of the same people doing the same thing in different ways, and you see how they've gotten better, and you see the good plays that they've made. Anyway, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of these kids and our coaches. And I got a picture of one of the coaches last night, and I got his attention after I took the picture. I said, "Hey, man, come here." I said, "I want to thank you because this is the first clear picture I got of you this year. I know you've been ducking me. I know you've been hiding behind people because you see me and you leave. I got you this time. I got a good picture of you." And he laughed. Some people just don't,
Yeah.
And it's a tightrope.
Right.
You're coaching. You don't get in my face with that camera. So it's a tightrope I have to learn when. And he was not coaching it. He's a baseball pitcher coach. So
Right.
he calls in the plays 2-3, 2-3 to the catcher, and the catcher signals to the pitcher.
Yeah.
And so when he's not doing that, he is still coaching, but I've learned when he's in the back and he's just kind of chilling, that's a good time to approach him. Hey, Destry, don't approach him whenever he's trying to communicate with the catcher, okay? That's not the good thing to do.
Yep.
Anyway, all right, Josh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
I
go
ramble one more. I want to wish my mother a speedy recovery. She just had a ablation yesterday.
Okay.
Which is one of the things they did to me whenever they had me out. They just burn off part of the heart area. It's like a little place they burn off so blood doesn't go through.
I have no idea what you're pointing to right now.
This is the heart. This is where the ablation is. Anyway,
Gotcha.
They burn off part of the heart so the blood doesn't
It's
go
like
through
when
there.
people say, "I'm from Michigan, right about here."
Right about there. That's
Sure,
right.
why not?
So she's 88 years old. She got put under, and anytime so wish her a speedy recovery, and I'll see you later on today. Love you, Mom.
Okay.
That's all I got, Josh.
Well, speaking of pictures, right? So today is Thursday. It's the Thursday right before Easter. And the interesting thing about the timing of this was last weekend, I should say, was Passover.
Palm Sunday. Right? Palm Sunday?
Well, so yes,
Okay.
yeah, the week before Easter had been Palm Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't often correspond. I don't know. More about that another time, I guess.
All right.
You kind of sidetracked me with that
Sorry.
one. Now I'm
Sorry,
thinking
Bob.
about the correspondence of dates. But
I
anyway,
was just trying to drop some knowledge bomb.
no, that's great. That's great. We could go to the Palm Sunday thing and talk about that one too, because
Okay.
we're kind of going along this theme of pictures, right? Because there have been pictures long before there's been film,
Right.
I guess one way you can explore that is how people preserved the likeness of things before there was film. We drew things, we painted things, we sculpted
Wow.
things,
Hey,
all that kind of stuff. And but there's other ways of making pictures. And the Old Testament is full of pictures. Pictures of Christ are the ones that tend to stand out the most. And probably the strongest picture in the Old Testament of Christ is the Passover. And there's no, it was no accident that Jesus was eating the Passover meal the night before his crucifixion. And we've talked about that before, right? How there's, in that traditional Passover feast, there's 4 cups, and those 4 cups have names that are associated with, they come from Exodus 6, and they have to do with the tradition that the Passover commemorated, which was their deliverance from slavery in Egypt. And so there's 4 cups there: the cup of sanctification, the cup of deliverance, the cup of redemption, and the cup of praise. And when Jesus,
Can I
someone's
say
trying to get a
something real
hold of
quick?
you.
I have this on. It's on airplane mode.
Huh.
It's on, look at it. It's on airplane mode. Can you put that over there somewhere? I just checked it. It's on airplane mode. It's making noises like it's not.
But yeah, so these come from Exodus 6 to commemorate those different components of their deliverance from Egypt. But when Jesus in the New Testament, when he was in that upper room with the disciples eating the Passover meal, he starts elaborating on what the true meaning of this is as well. And he said he picked up the wine and says, "This is my blood." He takes the bread, says, "This is my body," all this stuff, and he instructs them that whenever they eat that bread and drink that wine, do it while remembering him.
Right.
And so the question is, like, which component of that was he referring to? Because there was 4 different cups, and that passage in Matthew gives us a little bit of clues if you look into it, because of what was happening around it. Like when he went, it mentions the sop in the Passover feast, which was between the second and the third cup in the traditional Passover Seder, that Jewish word for it. But so what he was saying is he took that cup of redemption and said, "This is my blood. Remember me whenever you drink this cup." And then he made another statement that the next one, the cup of praise, is like, "I won't drink of this until I come again." And so and we spent a whole podcast on this, right? Separating, there's a couple thousand years between those 2 cups. Well, there's more to it, because in that the centerpiece of that Passover meal was that lamb that was slain. And back in Exodus, God gives instructions about when this happens. It's the 14th of the first month on the Jewish calendar. You take a lamb that's without blemish and you kill it and you roast it, and he gave all these instructions on what to do with the blood, what to do with the meat, how to consume it, all this kind of stuff. And then said that this is a commemoration, this is a memorial that you do every year forever. And we read about this in Scripture being celebrated many different times. And so Jesus, being at that Last Supper before he was crucified, taking that Passover meal, he was sort of hammering this idea home that this whole Passover was a picture of him. Yes, it commemorated the deliverance from Egypt, but it did so in a way that pointed forward to what was going to be eternal deliverance from sin. And what's interesting, on our Wednesday night class in the gun club, we've been spending, the past 16 or 17 weeks going through the book of Revelation, and we're not even halfway through it. Hopefully we'll pick up some speed, but a lot of people wanted to start going through that. And in Revelation chapter 5, there's very, very Jewish Passover sounding language. And to sort of give some context in Revelation, the first couple chapters starts out with John writing down a message that Christ had to 7 different churches. And then after that, John, he looks up and he's given a picture. He's given access to view the actual throne of God in heaven. And he starts describing the different components around it. The beasts that are around him with the 4 different faces. There's 24 elders. There's the saints and martyrs. Things like that. But he says in chapter 5, verse 5, there's this book that's presented that has 7 seals, and no one is qualified or able to open this book except for Christ. And so Christ is presented here in a really interesting way. It says, verse 5, "One of the elders said unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book, and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God, sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand that sat upon the throne." So this lamb that was slain, sometimes if we're not looking at this too closely, we'll sort of compare that to Christ being crucified on the cross. That was a different sacrifice. That was the atonement sacrifice, which Christ was. But in this case, they're using Passover language. This was the lamb that was slain. Just like in the Passover feast, you took a lamb and you slayed it. The atonement feast was goats, or the atonement sacrifice was goats. So in Revelation here, he's presented this way as this lamb that was slain, being the only one who has the qualifications to open this book. This book, which is judgment upon judgment upon judgment on sin. So not only was he qualified to, because he's the only one that doesn't have sin, and so he was qualified to pronounce those judgments, but he was also this Passover lamb. So when we're back in the earlier books of the New Testament, when Jesus is describing this, he's starting to give more and more clarification on what the Passover means, to show like every element of this gives a different aspect of not just Christ's character, but his destiny. He's going to, that lamb that was slain, that's the centerpiece of the Passover. That's Christ, because when he's presented in Revelation, he's presented as a lamb that was slain. This cup of redemption that it represents the blood of Christ, this third cup in the Passover feast, that's a representation of how Christ redeems us. And even later in Revelation, these 24 elders out around the throne, they expound on this as well and says, we are the redeemed. So there's a lamb that was slain, and these elders say, this lamb has redeemed us. And, back in the Passover feast, you have the bread that was broken that represents Christ's body. His body was broken and it was bruised for us, as we read it in Isaiah. And so all of this stuff is a really, really cool picture of Christ. And so as time goes on throughout not just the history of Israel, but even today, God told them this Passover feast is something you do every single year for the rest of your generations. It's like an everlasting memorial about at the time about how God delivered Israel from Egypt. But when Christ expounded on it more, it was something that points to Christ redeeming us from sin. And I think that's a really cool picture going into the Easter, the Easter service this Sunday, because we're celebrating the resurrection of Christ, and that's a very pivotal moment in all of history. Because had that not happened, none of this other stuff would have been true. It's only because Jesus was the correct lineage. He was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He was the root of David. That's a very genealogical statement to make, and Christ met that qualification through his paternal lineage and his maternal lineage. He also was God in the flesh, so he met that qualification of not having sin. He desired a relationship with us so much that he took our sin onto himself. And he became that atonement sacrifice for us. But he was also the source of our deliverance, that Passover lamb, so that the cup of his redemption, the bread that was his body that was broken, that was all done so that we could have any hope of an eternal life with him. Our sin had to be our sin problem had to be resolved, and he's the one that did it. And all of those pictures that we see in the Old Testament speak to that very deeply.
He was uniquely qualified.
Yes, uniquely qualified.
Meaning proprietary.
He was the only one.
He was the only one. His adoption had something to do with that. Him being
Right.
adopted was a key part of that.
Yeah. Every aspect of his life and his identity and his genealogy and everything.
Right.
It's irreducible complexity. If you take any one element out of it, then Christ couldn't have been who he was.
Well, that's a great term, irreducible.
Well, it's usually applied to like a mechanical system or a
Okay.
biological system. Like if you take any one piece of this out, it no longer works. Like the eyeball. You know,
Right.
if you take the lens out, it doesn't work. If you take the nerve out, it doesn't work. you
Yeah.
know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's irreducibly complex.
Gotcha. It's true. It's very appropriate. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And Easter is this Sunday. Are you going to the sunrise service?
To be determined.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think-
I'll either be there on video or I'll be there in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. It's fun. It's hard to get up that early, but it's fun to get out there and get in the baseball field and watch the sun come up. It's a good time.
Yep.
I'll be out there.
Sometimes I'm not in control of my weekend, so if I
that's
am in
true.
control, yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I hope to see you there.
Cool.
You'll be one of 5,000 people. You'll be the guy with the glasses on.
More likely I'll see you, but you won't see me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you'll see me. I'll be in front of everybody.
Yes. You're usually, by the way, it's always funny, you know, when you're talking about the camera and you start making the hand motions. One thing I notice about people who do the thing that they're talking about that requires hand
Oh,
motions
gosh. Yeah.
is their hand motions are very accurate. Like you notice this like with military people when they're talking about guns. You know, when normal people talk about guns, they do the little, you know, finger and thumb thing.
Right.
But when people who really use guns, you know, depending on, and Chris just did it, depending on what they do for their, you know, for their guns, whether it's rifles or pistols, you know, like military law enforcement, they'll either do the, you know, they'll have the different hand style for rifling or for rifles, or they'll have, you know, they'll you know, put their hands together in a certain way that they hold their pistol. That reflects reality rather
Right.
than the little.
Right.
And camera people do that a lot too. You know,
know
if
that.
you're not a camera person, that you know, you seem like click click. You know, I don't know what their left hand's doing, but when you talk about cameras, your hands go to that normal
Oh, is that
pose
right?
where you're holding the lens and you have the
I didn't realize that.
viewfinder and all that stuff. It's different than when someone who's not a photographer
That's funny.
talks about film.
Didn't realize that.
I don't know. I notice weird things.
All right, Josh. Thanks a lot, Chris. Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you all later. Bye.